Joining me in studio is Dr. Patrick Maluki, who's a lecturer at the Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies, University of Nairobi. Daktari, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Many thanks indeed for staying with us. And of course, we'll periodically continue to update you on what's happening at Nairobi Area Police Headquarters, where the governor of Garissa County, Ali Korane, is there at the moment. He's been arrested and over links with the attempted murder of a former finance CEC, Idris Eden Mukhtar. So we'll be crossing over there shortly. Stephen Leto will shortly be giving us an update on the same. But let's focus on what's happening globally. And of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta on his way back home. Does he come back a happy man, in your view, Daktari?
Thank you very much, Waiga, for this invitation. Yes, the president should come back a very happy man.
Very happy man.
Very happy man, one, because he was invited. That already speaks volume. That is a measure of regard, respect, and consideration. It's not every president gets invited to the White House. And therefore, I think this alone was a very big gesture for the president. And given what he's done already, the kind of negotiations and what is supposed to come after this, I think it was a success.
It was a success?
Yes.
For what reason would American President Donald Trump choose Uhuru Kenyatta as the man to invite over? You know, you don't, like I'm sure for you, you don't just invite anyone to your house.
That is true.
There's a reason. To what benefit would such a visit be for?
You know, I listened to your morning show with that American reporter.
Yes.
And you asked almost the same question, why Uhuru? And I think this is exactly where we need to start from. Certainly, there has been good branding of this country. And I think the president, the diplomatic machine, is really been aggressive. And somehow we can say Kenya is starting to reclaim its position in the global arena. That the country is feasible, quite a lot of things happening, positive things in the country. One, we were able to fix our political challenges, and I think the handshake and the kind of harmony that is now being experienced domestically speaks a lot of goodwill to the Kenyan. But apart from this, there has been a concerted effort from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the President has really done a good job in the personnel, the leadership, and the ministry, because this is the ministry which negotiates, it's the ministry which markets this country, and so when we see with regard to Kenya, then it seems something good has been happening. I want to speak to the consistency in the ministry, because the president has kept the ministers in that ministry in a way that has been consistent. With Amina Mohammed, after she left and finished her term, of course, picked on Monica Juma, who was an insider.
Yes.
And therefore, this consistency seems to be working. And therefore, the diplomatic machine has really been aggressive.
But there are those who say that this is a president, American President Donald Trump, who has no policy towards Africa as of yet, that is sort of publicly known, one, and who might have been advised that you're facing a lot of crisis at home, do something that will make you look, something that is different from what you'd ordinarily do. And that is why many were surprised to see a president who has called Africa certain names, then reaching out and saying, President Kenyatta, come over. Does that really make sense?
Well, to me, no, because states are rational. There is no government, no sitting president will just wake up all of a sudden and just do something which is not planned for. And therefore, for me, the invitation was very official. You feel
it was planned for a long time?
And it was, yes, it was based on certain considerations. The U.S. has a lot of options. I mean, it can engage with the president from different parts of the world. And therefore, when Trump looked at Africa, after inviting Nigeria, then, of course, the second choice being Kenya, then we should leverage on this. We should really interrogate what exactly is that we have done that has attracted the attention of the head of state of the U.S.
Give me three things in 3 words that you say, 1, 2, 3, are the reason why that man, and you can see we had put the picture behind there, would be interested in Kenya.
One, I think our investment opportunities that are coming up are really sending a lot of shockwaves internationally. And when you see China coming in, the U.S. must also say something must be happening in this country. And therefore, that must have caught the eyes of the president of the U.S. Secondly, in Africa, there's been this problem of governance and other kind of domestic chaos, which somehow Kenya has really surprised the world. The meeting of the leaders, political leaders, and trying to forge a common front speaks volume, and therefore something positive is happening. And thirdly, which in my opinion, is very important, has to do with the branding of the country. So the country is being portrayed positively, and therefore it is catching the eyes of quite a number of world leaders. And so this is an advantage that we need to capitalize on. Okay. Something is happening which is positive to this.
Which is positive to this.
Yeah.
In the past, an African president going to America might have been asked questions around what is the state of democracy in your country? Yeah. How are your elections being conducted? What sort of reforms are you doing to ensure that human rights in your country are at par with sort of what are global standards? But we have an American president now who, at least from what we've publicly seen, does not ask such questions. What does this mean in terms of relations with Africa? Will African presidents feel more comfortable around a president like Trump? Will African presidents feel they can get away with more? Because when they go to Trump, he might not bring up those issues. He is fighting his own fights at home. Yeah. How does this change engagement?
Well, yeah, that has been a major concern, and where like the U.S. has been reading the kind of holy book on what should be done in a particular country.
It's like being the world's policeman.
Definitely. I think, yes, of course, there must be misgivings about the records of human rights, and it is very normal in different regimes, and people have different perceptions. However, I think there are other things that are now kind of becoming more important than focusing on a number of weaknesses. Because even the president of the U.S. could speak to Uhuru Kenyatta with the matters of human rights, etc.
Like what happened last year, for example.
Yes, in private. And so what I'm trying to say, that we are reaping some dividends of the handshake, believe you me. Because
which handshake? There was a handshake in America yesterday. No. Not that one.
Not that one. Our own handshake.
Our own handshake.
Because in Africa, that was a kind of peace setting in a way where, because we were, last year, were really polarized. And so somehow, despite the shortcomings, at least Kenyan leadership has shown kind of commitment. And therefore, it would be useful to say, okay, we know there are challenges on this aspect, but there are also other motivating factors that probably need to be looked into. And so the message that we are getting is that we need to capitalize on this international positive image. Because
and run with it. And
yes,
actually, speaking of an international positive image, before we can even catch our breath, Theresa May should be on her way in the next couple of hours, headed here. What are your expectations from that particular meeting? She's actually in South Africa right now, if not on her way there. What are your expectations? She lands there today, then comes over on Thursday.
Yeah, I think it is to reassure the Kenyan state that UK still maintains the kind of regard it has. You know, it has been a while, I think for the last almost 30 years without having a UK leader visiting this country. I think there will be reassurance. And this does not come just for the sake of it. It's also part of the positive image that is radiating from Kenya. And I think diplomatically, we need to capitalize on these power resources. You know, every country has potential for growth, potential for being a great power. You know, the only problem is how we capitalize on the opportunities that occur to the countries.
There are those who say you could capitalize through debt. They lend you money, you pay back. You could capitalize through partnerships. There are different investment models. Which way should Kenya sort of go into these meetings with that sort of mindset?
No, I think the debt burden is a major problem in Africa, and that should not be the way to go. But I think capitalizing on investments which are able to have returns, you know, opening opportunities for Kenyan business, you know, our export, increasing exports, having access to UK market, having access to US market, to Chinese market. You know, I normally say one of the things that probably we could have done, if Kenya could negotiate to be given tender to supply eggs to China, you give them that huge population. You can imagine how much this can transfer. So I think this should be our focus as we engage with these world leaders. How much are we able to really access their markets so that also we see Kenyan produce and the products actually getting way there. That's the way.
Do you think the conversation with Trump will be the same with the conversation with May and with Xi Jinping?
I think the President Uhuru Kenyatta is very consistent with these 4 agenda.
Okay.
And this exactly, which is going to mark his legacy, he should be consistent on that, because infrastructure is a major area of investment, and this country needs to expand its infrastructure. Issues dealing with with healthcare is very close to his heart. And therefore, I would expect him to be consistent in these pursuing the 4 items of agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to read you a tweet here, posted by user Mike Omboro. He said, that was about late last night. What Kenya and the whole of Africa needs to understand is that it is not in the foreign interest of, and I think he was really referring to the West here, America and the UK, for Africa to develop. A developed Africa means, one, a new military rival. That means now Africa begins to play some sort of superpower role. A developed Africa means higher costs of minerals from countries where they have been benefiting. A developed Africa means higher costs of oil. We can now sell oil at whatever price because we have reserves. A developed Africa means possibly increased immigration or even a loss of immigration from certain countries because people now start going back to their homes. What Mike Omboro is ideally trying to say as a social media user is that the West prefers Africa as it is, poor, in need, begging. And so some would say that as much as we applaud President Uhuru Kenyatta's trip to America yesterday, it is the same narrative over the last 50 years that Africa will always be begging, or African nations, and the West will be glad to comply, but ensuring that they keep Africa down. What's your take?
Thank you, Waiga. One, the international system is a self-help system. You don't have to develop because other people want you to develop. Basically, you must claim your position. Every sovereign state has a right to develop, and therefore it is the responsibility of every. And in fact, it's very important that these tweets come because it should be to a realization that we are responsible for whatever we do. Our future. In a self-help system, you must work hard. You must win tenders, you must win market, you must have access, exploit the international system. And therefore, we are not expecting benevolence from the world. We have something to offer, and that's exactly what we are capitalizing on. What we are doing is being seen globally, and we need to move on the same direction so that we can win more attention from the international players. Ideally, as I mentioned earlier, every country has its own strategic importance, its own resources, and how you exploit the resources will determine the level of development which you. Now, when you have something to offer or to deny others, then they'll have regard for you. Okay. So already Kenya has a market which probably is, which China is using very well, and the US is trying to say, are we losing an opportunity here? That's basically international relations.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's basically international relations. Let me read one SMS here. A comment from Eldred says, indeed, the president is returning home a very contented leader, but the worry of the common citizen is the burden of debt arising from the loans secured towards projects such as the Mombasa-Nairobi highway, which President Trump actually spoke about yesterday. We hope the Americans will not allow cartels to frustrate the projects. We are our own worst enemies. This is a comment from Eldred. Let me get a final comment from you. Even if you, do you have any response to what Comment has said?
Yes, we are responsible to manage whatever resource comes to this country. Okay. And I think it is a responsibility of the government to make sure that whatever money is borrowed on public basis is utilized the right way. And therefore, this is exactly what we should be doing as a state. Yeah, to take charge on our responsibility and make sure that we don't balloon the debt to beyond our own levels.
Beyond the levels that, in fact, that they are right now, some would say.
Yes.